outsiders. They still called the local DCI a newcomer, even though he'd lived in the village for most of his life. Anyone new to the area setting up a business needed a lot of patience and, preferably, a lot of free samples. I hadn't minded. I wasn't in dire need of business, and I already had deals with other local florists, but I'd still retained a glimmer of hope that we could be allies. "What made you pick Merrifield to start your business?" I'd asked, hoping to spark an interesting conversation. Instead, the florist had looked down her nose at me. It had been a challenge because she was all of 5'2", but she'd managed it somehow. "When I did my market research, I discovered there was a distinct lack of credible competition in the area. I'm bringing in a quality service that this village desperately needs." She'd glanced behind me when she'd said it. I'd turned and discovered there was a poster pinned to the back of the shop door. "Ritchie's Floristry. Book me for your next event." I'd bitten my tongue but hadn't commented. We all had to make our living. "I wish you the best of luck with it all," I'd said, hoping to patch up whatever mess I'd unwittingly created when I'd walked into the florist's shop. All I'd been given in return was a steely stare, before the door had opened and a prospective customer had entered. The cheerful expression had been back in an instant. I'd internally made judgments about the very literal two-faced nature of the new florist, but in the end I'd cut my losses and walked away. Luana Ritchie didn't want to be my business partner or my friend, but that was okay, I'd told myself. If we were competing for the same customers, I could forgive her for giving me the cold shoulder, especially if she'd committed to opening in Merrifield without realising that my little flower business existed. I'd returned home, imagining that it would be the last I heard of the new florist, which went to show how much I'd underestimated her. It began with the adverts posted around Merrifield in all the places where I had my own cards and posters. It was a free country and there was nothing stopping her, but I hadn't appreciated the wording Ritchie's Floristry had used. "Is your current florist charging you too much? Give us a call and we guarantee we will beat their quote," was one which had particularly annoyed me. Since when did florists try to undercut their competitors? I'd shrugged it off, knowing that while it was clear Luana was willing to take a financial hit just to beat me, her flowers came from Africa and Spain, and people valued British-grown blooms, didn't they? Something told me I'd soon find out the answer to that question. I'd first acknowledged that Luana Ritchie was out to get me when I saw her website. It showed up in the space above mine on the internet search engine, because she'd paid for advertising where she knew it would appear, one place above my flower subscription site. Luana was offering her own bouquet subscription service. I'd done some teeth grinding and had clicked through to discover how much she was charging. When I'd seen the price, I'd added the subscription to my online shopping basket before going through to the checkout page, believing it to be a mistake that would correct itself. It wasn't a mistake. Luana Ritchie was genuinely selling bouquets at a price so low it couldn't be profitable. That was the moment when I'd drawn the conclusion that she was trying to drive me out of business with her lower prices. I'd tried to tell myself that quality would save the day. I had loyal customers who had known me all my life. They surely wouldn't be tempted away by the lower prices offered by this strange newcomer. But inside, I knew my subscription numbers were going to take a tumble when people looked for me online and discovered a much cheaper option. I'd mentally repeated that it was fine. My business had many different facets to it, and if one of them was less successful, then the other facets could pick up the slack. I was going to rise above this odd competitor. But that didn't mean I couldn't be petty from the privacy of my home. I'd gone back to the search engine results, and had clicked on her ad as many times as it had let me, before her advertising budget had been exhausted. I'm not ashamed to admit that it did make me feel a tiny bit better. It was at the local farmers' market when my patience with Luana Ritchie finally ran out. She had done something so blatant it had left me with no doubt at all. We were enemies, and this was war. A breeze caught the petals of the flowers I was arranging in the vase I'd placed on my stall at the cuckoo fair. They ruffled but didn't fall. I smiled, knowing I'd picked the cream of the crop for my display. I'd be lying if I didn't admit I'd upped my game with the sample bouquet I'd decided to display on my table. It was the subscription bouquet that would go out in a week's time.